Hey guys.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us. The movie, if you guys haven't seen it, it's about two couples, one played by Ben Stiller and Naomi Watts, who are in their mid-40s, and they befriend a younger couple played by Adam Driver and Amanda Seyfried. And they really like the younger couple's energy and way of looking at life and way of looking at culture, but it comes, of course, with complications. Noah, there's a line in the movie that I really love, which is when Ben's character, Josh, says that for the first time he doesn't feel like a child imitating an adult. And the great counterpoint to that is that Jamie and Darby, Amanda Seyfried and Adam Driver's characters, have a sort of a childlike way of wanting to grab at everything. They don't feel like there's any borders, but both couples are very likable. Was it kind of tricky to make sure that neither one was weighted too far in either direction, one too sympathetic, one too not so?
Well, it was further complicated in the writing because we meet the younger couple through the older couple's eyes and experience. So, we're also kind of, when we first meet Adam and Amanda's characters, there's this kind of, they're sort of romanticized even because Ben is romanticizing them. So we're not even getting quite a fair look at them probably from the beginning even of the movie. But I mean, I kind of felt like I could easily invest in everybody, and I didn't feel like I took sides particularly as I was writing it. I mean, it was pretty, I think I was sort of trying to equally poke fun of everyone and also equally give everybody their due.
Yeah, because even though Jamie and Darby have got there's some complications with how they look at the world, especially Adam Driver's character, their earnestness is still sort of appealing. Their earnestness is something to admire in some ways.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. And I mean, even with Adam and Maria's characters, we also meet at the beginning of the movie, and they're kind of, in this sort of, they're in this sort of romance of just having had a child and sort of, and we're having fun with that at the same time that I also, didn't want to, make too much fun of them. I wanted them to sort of also, that's why you cast people like Adam, because he makes Fletcher so likable.
Adam, your character Fletcher is actually, I see him as sort of a cross between a truth teller and sort of the poster boy for middle-age acceptance.
Yeah.
Which is a very important thing for those of us in middle age. How did you come to the role? How did you come to the project? Did you guys know each other?
He asked me to do it.
Did you think of Adam for the role? Had you guys met before?
Yeah, and I'd been wanting to find something to do with Adam, and so when I was thinking about who to play this, Adam was the first person I thought of.
Yeah. I think we have a clip. There's a clip from a restaurant scene that might be a good time right now to kind of go to and show the energy between the characters. It's actually a great launching off point for this question, which is that is there a danger when you're only communicating with people of your own circle, your own age group, that you feel like you're only just essentially in an echo chamber in terms of what you like and what you don't like?
I think that starts when you're young.
Yeah.
That you decide this is who I am, this is my thing, this is what I like, and then to actually get older and grow into liking other things is kind of important and difficult.
Yeah.
Because as you get older, you're like, oh, I know that.
Yeah.
I like that, or I don't like that, or I know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what that is. That's
a dangerous thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know what that is. Yeah.
But I've been doing that since I was 15.
Yeah. So have I, actually. I mean, right. I mean, you kind of feel like you know like what you like. Yeah. But do you think? I think there's actually a great thing that the movie sort of says about not just about middle-age acceptance, but also about middle-age curiosity and trying to find it. The avenue through the film is through Jamie and Darby, but the reality is that if you shut yourself off to new technologies, new types of music, new types of movies, you're really missing something, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about, I mean, sort of further to what you were saying, you guys were just talking about, I think it's about being open to new experience, and, not deciding that this is, not getting too comfortable with this notion of like, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be, which can also, it can be a defense, but it can also be depressing, and I think, particularly, and in the case of like a marriage or in this marriage, are we, is it just going to be like this till the end? You know, or you know, and you know, is that okay, or does it need something? I mean, I always felt like in a way that they, you know, Ben and Naomi's characters knew on some level that they needed something to shake things up, but it was unconscious, and in a way the younger couple is like conjured up as a, you know, as a kind of, you know, just a kind of way to rescue them.
Like a genie in a bottle or something. It's a wish they didn't know they were making.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. We have another clip if you guys want to run it right now. This is actually another good scene that I think shows sort of the way the lots of different cultural appropriations are happening in the film. The issue of cultural appropriation is a very interesting one. All of us being born in the 60s, I think we can all agree, like we like our touchstones to be appreciated by people who've come after us, but we also don't want them to be claimed by anyone. You know, that's mine, that thing, that the Cookie Puss commercial, though you're sitting next to the guy who had the Cookie Puss LP. So, but that's an important thing for us, isn't it? You want it to be appreciated but not claimed.
Right, and yeah, and Ben's character kind of, you know, goes between, you know, on one hand, appreciating that these things that he maybe dismissed when he was younger are kind of being brought back to him, and he can, you know, the Goonies, Eye of the Tiger, he can kind of, you know, see that maybe that, you know, he, you know, should have been more open to their, you know, to their merits, and then, you know, but then it starts, the sort of other side of it, the darker edge of it is what you're saying, which is he starts to then grow frustrated with, you know, Adam's appropriation of stuff that he feels, you know, define his childhood. Yeah, he doesn't have an ownership of it anymore. Now it's sort of out there. Adam, I'm interested in a sense of from rap's point of view. I mean, it's got a history of sampling because that's part of what makes rap. How do musicians look at that in that sense? That sort of sense of I can take from here and take from there. It's looked at differently, isn't it?
Currently now?
Or when you guys were when the Beastie Boys were coming up in the 80s. I mean, through...
Well, sampling is... rap didn't start from sampling.
Oh, no.
But I mean, I guess in a way it kind of did. But
it's such a part of it.
Sampling now is very different from when it was.
Yeah. Well, just how like the idea of that in music, there is sort of no sense of this is that and I can't take from it. There's sort of, everything is sort of out there for the taking in some ways, as long as you want to be able to.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore.
When you did Pulse, didn't they change the...
Yeah, we were the first case to use the word sample.
Right. And you won that case. Yeah, that's right.
No, we didn't win that case. No.
Well, there was a case though. Wasn't there? There was a case though.
There was nothing to win. You know, if you use somebody's music, you should pay them.
Right.
And that wasn't the case when we started doing it, because it was a brand new thing.
Right.
And then it was the Jimmy Castor Bunch was like, hey, that's our song.
Yeah.
We're like, oh yeah, okay, so we should pay you for it. That's how it works.
Yeah. You know, spinning it out to a larger sense, do you guys feel like there's more sort of there's weaker barriers in that way now? And I'm not just talking about music, but I'm talking about, you know, with everything from YouTube to even reality TV. The way the movie sort of deals with it is a sense of that Josh is a documentarian, and that truth itself is sort of something that has sort of fluid borders for Adam Driver's character. I feel like because of technology and because of sort of just the way the culture looks at things now, there is less of a defined sense of that's truth, that's not. This is a documentary, this is not. Noah, does that sort of track with how the film represents it?
Yeah, and I mean, and when I chose to make them documentarians, I you know, wanted to engage a bit in that kind of discussion and an argument, as it turns into for them. But I don't have, you know, answers for it. I don't you know, necessarily know. You know, have a strong feeling about like, oh, well, the way Jamie does it is not appropriate or anything like that. Ben feels that in the movie, but you know, a lot of that is even Ben is searching for something much. He makes it into Jamie's sort of truthfulness, but he's really looking for something in his own life and his own relationship, and he's put it on Jamie and puts it on this sort of, you know, ethical, you know, these ethical questions of, you know, in art and documentary. But it was a way to kind of have those arguments, but also kind of make it about something psychological and emotional, which was, if you find you've got something like that in a script, it's always a good thing, because then you can kind of talk about one thing without really talking about it.
That's right. And in fact, Charles Grodin's character, who is Ben Stiller's father-in-law in the film, sort of represents another level in some ways, another generation of documentarian for whom there's even another sort of sense of truth, right? Even a more concrete sense in some ways.
Yeah, well, and also in the movie it gets conflated with ambition, which I think it does in life too. I mean, in people's lives and in conversation about this stuff of success and wanting success, and what does that mean, and what does it mean to be a success. I mean, I think all of those things are also very much Ben's character's struggle. So, and his sort of idea of Grodin's, that Grodin has, maybe some, it's the wise man on the mountain who back in the 60s and 70s, they were doing this in a pure way, and, it's not that simple either.
Yeah. It's also an amazing Charles Grodin turn that, for those of us who are Grodinites, it's, which I think sounds like a cult, Grodinites.
Yeah, I know that.
We have another clip we'll take a look at right now. Adam, you're very funny in that scene, I have to say. Is there have you been wanting to act for a while? There's a great disgustedness quality that very few people can sort of bring out that's very, very funny. You're an old man in a hat, you say, with such spite.
Well, that's...
Yeah.
Ben Stiller is really funny. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but you should check out what he did. He's pretty funny.
Our leading purveyor of angry funny, I think he is.
I think the big thing, not the big thing, but a thing that about this movie is the like a kind of anti-YB normal wackiness that I really liked about just with the hat and the YB normal hat and the kids being kooky kids. And I kind of related to sort of not liking that, so maybe that's part of why I had some disdain on my face.
Do you have friends who are doing that sort of thing, who are kind of experimenting with new stuff?
I'm not going to name names. Yeah. Some friends. No, I think we all have friends that try a little too hard. That just try a little too hard.
Just try. Let's talk very quickly about Ben, who, as I mentioned, is sort of our leading light of angry funny. Noah, I think you had mentioned you did not write Greenberg for him, right? But you did write this character for him for While We're Young, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do something again with him after Greenberg, and when I was writing this, I felt like it was an opportunity to do something that maybe was more. Part of the pleasure of Greenberg was taking Ben and putting him in a very unfamiliar character, unfamiliar for him as well. I think he found a way to kind of relate to that guy and play him brilliantly, but he was, he's not like Greenberg.
Yeah.
But with this character, I felt like it was a way to maybe do something that was more in his comic voice, but to place it in my environment.
Yeah, and his co-stars Naomi Watts has a terrific sort of seeking quality. She's sort of naive and seeking and sweet and funny all at the same time. Adam does this great thing with. I want to bring up Adam and Amanda in terms of just directing them. Amanda has a great moment where she and Naomi are walking across the street, and she's not looking at Naomi as they're walking and talking, and she's just talking out into the air, which I think is a great bit of sort of actorly presence, of conveying something. And Adam does this thing with his long arms, his long hands, of sort of this prayerful type of thing to emphasize how earnest he is and how thankful he is. Working with them, is that just part of their machinery as actors? How much of that was all three of you kind of working together?
Yeah, and I mean it's what they bring to it, and that's the great thing about when you cast right and when you have actors like that they, I get asked a lot about how much I allow for improvisation, and the answer is none. But they bring all this, they reinvent these characters, and that's what I'm looking for, and what the pleasure is for me in making these things. I mean, with Adam and Amanda, we talked a lot about the characters. We had ideas and things, but so much of it is just sort of what they create. I mean, Adam is so interesting. Everything Adam does is so unexpected and interesting.
Yeah, the alchemy there of the script working with them is really terrific. I agree. We're going to take some questions. Anybody have anything?
I'm just curious for you, Adam, how acting came into the mix for you. I mean, I can understand, music, acting, both storytelling, but because you're quite good, so I'm curious
thank you.
how that started.
I was in a couple movies a long time ago, actually. That's what I thought I would do when I was a kid. I thought I was going to be an entertainer in some way. But
He's very good in them too. Have you seen Lost Angels?
No, you don't have to see that. But that brings me to a question that I have to you, but I'll get to that question later. But he asked me to do it. I wasn't thinking about doing it. I was playing a show at Joe's Pub, and Noah came, we were hanging out having drinks, and I just assumed that it was because you were drunk that you asked me to do it. So I wasn't planning on it. He asked me to do it.
It was that, but I was so embarrassed I couldn't take it back.
Right after you said it, yeah. Thanks.
Where else do you think this movie could have been made besides New York, with the juxtaposition of the more mature, wealthier versus the hipster cultural movement that's happening? Could it have been made anywhere else?
It's a good question. I'd like to think so. That there's this versions of this going on. I've definitely seen versions of this in Los Angeles, just another city that I know fairly well. But when I've traveled around with it, people seem to kind of recognize these things. In Europe even, and different cities. So it feels, obviously, for me, it was very important that it be New York, and that it be, that I didn't want to make it anywhere else. If for some reason they were like, you'll get a tax break, a better tax break if you make it in Michigan. I wouldn't have done that, but I'd like to think that Michigan, they can relate to this as well.
The collision, I think, that in New York, you're obviously always bumping into people who do what you do, who do things you'd like to do, who do things that you find are interesting. That's obviously part of New York. I'd like to...
I was going to say also the pedestrian culture, which you see even in that, when they're crossing Park Avenue and the, ride on the street and the bike, and I think I just said that to some guy on a city bike actually today.
Yeah.
Not as loud as Adam did, but I think that's so much. For me, it's what's so interesting about it is sort of the like you're saying, the collision of people in this environment and the anthropology of it, of having a kind of, they have a, if you've seen the movie, they have like a picnic, like street beach, they call it, out in the street, where they kind of have like a barbecue out in the street. It's just more interesting in New York for me than if it was in Los Angeles and they're just driving everywhere,
One of the issues that come up in the movie is that Ben Stiller's character kind of feels like Adam Driver is going to look up to him as well. It's sort of very gentle, but it's definitely sort of there that he thinks he'd like to be a bit of a role model, even though there's lots of different dynamics going on. I'm wondering if both of you had instances where, as you were coming up, older filmmakers, older musicians sort of gave you advice, or kind of you looked to them for a way to be.
Me personally?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We looked up to Run DMC when we were first starting out as a rap group, and so we just did whatever they did, or tried to, and they were okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Any bit of advice that any older musicians or anybody sort of that you looked up to sort of give you, sort of not set you on your path a little bit, but give you a little bit of advice that you still remember?
No.
You were
I
your
guess
own
I never
man.
asked.
Yeah.
I never actually asked, like,
Yeah.
what. You just, I guess, for me personally, I just watched and tried to imitate.
Yeah. Noah, how about you?
Yeah, Peter Bogdanovich, who actually has a brief, he introduces Grodin at his event towards the end of the movie. I cast him in a movie in the late '90s, and we remained friends, and he's. Somebody I really admire, but also someone who's just become a good friend. And then there are a few, filmmakers like that. The best advice I got was when I was making Squid and the Whale. I was somebody had there's a cat in that movie, and I wanted, we had to cast the cat, and I had this idea. I'm going to use my friend's cat. and it was Ethan Cohen who said, "Hire the professional cat." Don't hire an amateur.
Don't go with the amateur.
And after I made the movie, I realized what good advice that was. I did hire the professional cat. Yes. I took his advice, but even with the professional cat, because cats, there's no such thing as really even a professional cat. They're not like dogs. They're
right.
Very.
Those bastards.
There's about 4 cats to do 4 different things, and
right.
and anyway, that's the best advice I've gotten.
I love it. You can spin out into anything. Kind of always get the professional cat.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anyone over this side?
Hi, this is a question for Noah. Noah, I was just wondering how, when you've written with someone, how different that process is, because obviously you've got a character in your head when you're writing that character, but when you have to share characters with another writer, I mean, specifically, I guess, Life Aquatic or, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the two sort of, I guess the real collaborations I've had are with Wes on those movies, and then with Greta on Frances Ha, and the movie we have coming out later in the year called Mistress America. And, I really, I feel like it's like the movie kind of lets you know how you want to do it to some degree. In the case of the Wes ones, one was his idea, and he asked me if I would help him, kind of develop it and write it. And so it was very kind of clear, parameters of like, I'm here to kind of help you make your movie and make it the best thing for you to make. So, which is, freeing in a way too, because you don't have to worry about what you're going to do with it. You're just making it for them. And Fantastic Mr. Fox was an adaptation of a Roald Dahl book, so it also there was source material that we had to interpret, so that had its own kind of, in a way, it was almost like 3 of us making it, And the things with Greta were for her to be in too. So in a way, they all had very specific sort of goals in mind, But I find, I like doing both. I like, after a while, if I've written a couple things alone, it's a great, just you go crazy. I mean, it's like it's good to like then involve somebody else and make it a conversation. But the other thing too is that were friends before, before we did it. So it wasn't like, we had to learn each other. We kind of already had, a shorthand.
When did you start this script? The script was a couple of years ago that you started, right?
This script actually I started after, and I had a version of it after Greenberg, and we were going to maybe make it then, and then it didn't happen for various reasons. So then Greta and I made Frances, and then when we were done with Frances, Ben was making Walter Mitty, which he directed as well, so it was a big commitment for him. So I had a long time to wait for him to be done. So then we actually went and made Mistress America, which, even though it's coming out after this, we shot before this.
Was it good to come back to this after a little bit of a break? Did you kind of look at it with fresh eyes?
Yeah, and I rewrote it and changed some things, and it was. I think I'm glad I made it the way I did, and not the other way. Yeah. Whatever that would have been.
We have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. Yeah, right here.
Hi, I have a little bit of a reverse question from earlier. So now that you both are established, how do you give back to others?
You know what I mean? If somebody wants to ask me, for my opinion, I'll give it. You know what? Actually, I was at the Knicks game the other night, and a kid asked me. He said, "I'm a musician. I want to be in a band," and blah blah blah. And he's like, "Do you have any advice for me?" So that actually did happen to me just like 3 nights ago. Yeah. And I said, "Leave me alone." No, I said, "Play the music that you like to listen to." I said, don't try to follow whatever is hot right now. Just play what you like to listen to.
That's good advice.
He didn't. I don't think he really cared what I said. I think he wanted something more specific. I don't know. But I did that.
Yeah. Noah, how about you?
Well, I mean, it's different giving advice to somebody you know well versus somebody who comes up to you at the Knick game, because you don't know where they're coming from or what they really want to do. And there's so many variations of doing what, there's so many different ways to be a filmmaker or be a musician. And so, and I don't know, my way was my way. And I think a lot of, for me, even figuring out myself and learning even myself and myself as a filmmaker and how I wanted to do these things was unlearning things that were kind of set in place and told to me when I first made my first movie. Because I made my first movie and they were like, well, they sort of tell you this is how this is how you do it, and then you do this, and the editing process is like this, and then you mix it like this. And it took maybe 2 movies to like get rid of all that stuff. And so generally my advice is go do it and figure it out for yourself.
The cat advice is really specific and good, though.
The cat advice was good, but I don't know that I could have heard the cat advice. It was my 3rd movie that I got the cat advice.
Really?
Yeah. So then in a way I was ready for it. I had to grow into that.
Grow into the cat advice.
Yeah.
How do you see technology having changed both of what you do, to change music, change film, for better, for worse? It's more accessible. It's how do you see how it's changed both?
Well, I mean, it is easier to say if someone says about filmmaking now, like, I want to make a movie, what do you think I should do? You can say now, go do it, because you can do it now and it can look pretty good, and it can be, in a way that it was harder, it took more money to do it anyway when I was starting. But, there's so many, technology has changed filmmaking in so many ways that are both, I think, that have sort of been are more sort of articulated and spoken about in the media and things. But I actually think it's changed filmmaking in ways we don't, like a lot of people don't even realize. And just the way we used to make it and the way we used to photograph things and how we would color time and how we would edit. And, and I think it has changed things. I don't know that it's made it better or worse. I really don't know. But it's made it different.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned to me a couple of months ago that how they block scenes or how they stage things. There's more 2 shots or whatever, because they're oftentimes thinking this might be looked at on a screen this big.
That's interesting.
And it's obviously they're not making Lawrence of Arabia, but by the same token, they're sort of thinking about that a little bit more in their composition. I thought was interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah. Although then you see like some filmmakers, like Wes on Grand Budapest, or like Christopher Nolan, or something, like working within different aspect ratios in the same movie, which I feel like in a way is happening more now than, or at least I'm more aware of it than it maybe was a few years ago. And because technology kind of almost sort of different ways of looking at it kind of almost allows you to experiment more and be less precious, like you have to stay in one, it's also changed, with IMAX and theatrical viewing too. But it's like on one hand it limits things, and then on other hands people maybe start experimenting. I felt that with Francis when we made it, that on one hand black and white movies are always have some kind of limited viewership commercially, because somehow people are like to look at things in color. I don't know, but it seems like old-timey or something. But at the same time, I feel like the way we all have on our phones and all the different apps, and that there's more like black and white's more accessible too in a way than it was maybe 15, 20 years ago. So I don't know.
I think so. Yeah. Adam, how about musically? Do you think it's easier?
Oh no, it just reminded me of something that happened a few years ago. Because we mix records. When you mix a record now, you really have to think that most people are just going to listen like on their computer, on their laptop speakers, which is not the same.
Yeah.
Because you have to listen to that, or you have Beats headphones that sound amazing, or you have this, and so which do you decide to do? And it just reminded me that we were mixing our, I don't remember which, last record it was a few years ago, and Adam Yauk was like, oh, we're doing a mix in quad, we have to.
Oh.
Which is like, nobody has that. Nobody has like a 4-speaker home stereo.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, no, a lot of people have that. Nobody has that.
Right.
And we did it, and it sounds really fucking cool, but
Yeah.
I mean, like 4 people have probably heard
But
it.
that's interesting. Yeah, you either have to go, you're right, you're thinking about this or thinking about that. It's a very interesting, the disparity between the two. There was a question over here in the front. I want to make sure that we get to those guys.
I'm curious about how you think While We're Young fits into your larger body of work, because I know it has this sort of familiar, overgrown adolescence narrative, but it also has been called your most commercial or accessible film to date. And I'm curious if you see yourself going in that direction or how Mistress America is going to unfold.
I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question to. I mean, I keep introducing the movie as my most accessible movie, just because I feel like, all right,
This is the one.
People are saying, yeah. But you know, I kind of make the thing that's interesting to me, that's in front of me, you know, or that I present in front of me, that I come up with at that moment, that seems like the livest wire in my brain, that feels like, oh, this might be a movie. I'm gonna, you know, and I don't think about it in terms of any kind of conversation it's having with previous movies. I mean, I understand that I seem to kind of return to themes that, you know, that clearly must be interesting to me, you know, to me, yeah. Except with this one, maybe some other people are interested in this one. It's accessible, but I don't really think about them as in like a kind of, you know, maybe one day I'll look at all the Blu-ray. Well, I don't even know there'll be Blu-rays on this day I'm talking about, but you know, or streaming or whatever. I'll see them all on a shelf somewhere, you know, and I'll have some kind of epiphany. But I just sort of get interested in what's in front of me and, you know, keep going.
And in terms of accessibility, even, I mean, the last 6 films, which are all pretty great, I think, on a pretty great scale. I mean, Margot at the Wedding is pretty accessible too. I mean, I think there's I think accessibility is sort of one of those things. I think people, I think people throw that word around. I think a great film's a great film. I'm not sure if, accessible.
You're just the content provider.
That's
the content
Provide content.
Next to you was a question over here.
Just trying to provide content.
Noah, you mentioned that you don't allow for any improvisation of your characters, your actors. Is that really true of this film and everything? Any specific reason, or
True.
It's all true?
It's really true.
No leeway.
It's really true.
It's funny how people have a sense of like the Coen Brothers movies or Wes Anderson's movies or Richard Linklater's movies or Noah's movies. Sort of they seem like they're improvised, but that just means that so much great work has gone into it, like so much hard work has gone into make it feel so natural, right? That's part of the trick.
I guess so. I mean, I don't. No, I don't have any. There's none.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm writing a script, it's like I'm improvising it as I'm writing it, So, I mean, it starts up here at some point,
Let's just say I've been improvising for the past 30 years. And working with Noah, you can't say unless it's written on the page. You can't say You can't say like.
No like.
But the idea,
I mean, you can. You're gonna have to do another take where you don't say or like, and that's how it goes.
And it's fun, right?
It's fantastic.
Yeah. You really learn something.
No. It's working with someone like Noah. It's nice when someone has a clear view of what they want to make, and we're here to make this thing, and we're all here for you, and it's nice working with somebody that has that, and you want to help them do what they're doing.
When you guys look at your earlier work as a filmmaker, as a musician, do you see the man you'd grow into 20 years later, 15, 20 years later or something? Because it kind of feels like that with this movie. You're looking at these characters, Adam and Amanda's characters, and Ben's character especially, but also Naomi's. Look at them. There's a moment where Ben says, you always wanted a more successful me. Well, here he is, and he's talking about the Adam Driver character. But I think it's interesting when you look at yourself 20 years earlier, do you see, do I see where that guy was going and he's become me? Or when you look back on those films and that work, do you think that you could have gone different ways? Adam, you want to start?
I can see me from then to now.
Yeah.
I'm happy how things turned out.
Yeah.
I think it, took some turns and looking. If I was me then, looking at me now, I'd be. Look at that.
You don't look at that guy as
Look at that guy.
Right.
He's basically the same with
Yeah.
a little
Some experience and
little fixes here and there.
right.
Yeah.
Noah, how about you?
But what's an Apple Store? What's he doing?
I can do what with my phone?
Right.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I sort of, I started out with this idea of being a certain kind of filmmaker, I guess, and writing what I would do and writing things that felt personal and came from me and were, and I've continued to do that. And so yeah, I feel I'm glad how it shook out or has shaken out so far.
You can see how you got from there to here, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Noah Baumbach and Adam Horovitz. While We're Young.
Thank you.
Go see it. Go see it again. You've seen it once, twice. Third time's the charm.